Way ahead of you, little buddy. Are there cattle in Idaho? I heard it's not a real beef and potatoes kind of state.
Okay, so I have the pleasure to talk to David here. Dave, why don't you introduce yourself before we sort of dive into our conversation today?
Sure. My name is David Andrew Wiebe. I'm the founder of musicentrepreneurhq.com. I'm a musician myself. I've taught music. I've been involved in the production side of music. Basically, pretty much anything you could think of. Investing, freelancing. I've done a ton of work in the music industry.
Hi, this is Christopher, founder of Musical You, and welcome to the Musicality Podcast. On today's show, I'm joined by David Andrew Wiebe. David is a man of many projects, and as well as writing on his site, musicentrepreneurhq.com, and hosting the New Music Industry podcast. He is also a songwriter, he performs regularly with 2 bands, and he's written a book, The New Music Industry.
Hello and welcome to the Music Money Podcast. Today, my guest is David Andrew Wiebe. David is the 5-time self-published and 3-time best-selling author of The New Music Industry.
David Andrew Wiebe, welcome to the Empower Network. Thanks for being here.
I'm your host, Sarah Troy. My guest today is David Wiebe. He is a musician, but however, he knows that other musicians have a hard time promoting themselves. The business side of things is not always easy to do. How do you make money out of it? How do you draw attention? There is all that business hat that a lot of musicians don't want to do, but in order to get their music out there, they need to learn it. And he's learned that the hard way.
Welcome to Spark Infinity Rewind, where we revisit the conversations that continue to illuminate and inspire. Each rewind session brings back powerful moments from our archive, highlighting the timeless wisdom and creative insights that deserve another spotlight. From breakthrough revelations to practical strategies that transformed artistic journeys, these carefully selected replays offer both newcomers and longtime community members the chance to experience pivotal Spark conversations with fresh perspectives. Join us as we breathe new life into these enduring stories, proving that truly transformative creative wisdom never expires. It simply deepens with time and reflection. The quote of the day goes something like this: there are endless planes of attention, endless realities, and endless mind states. They're like collections of atoms and protons and neutrons, nuclei. They just go on forever. They're plasma. They're fluid. They're alive. Who said that? I believe it was Frederick Luntz. Today's date is May 18th, 2025. And if you happen to be watching this on any other day, you are much better at time travel than I am. Welcome to another episode of Spark Infinity Rewind. I'll be your host for today, David Andrew Wiebe, to set the tone for today and to bring you in to today's conversation. Continuing along the lines of what we did last week, I wanted to showcase a few of the conversations, a few of the TEDx talk style presentations that I gave at the question community. This was a really fun project for me. I got to tech host the question community. It was the creation of Frederick Tamagi, who had the idea of bringing TEDx style conversations about truth, like an open forum discussing the nature of truth. And I got to share, I believe, 3 times. I think I said this before. I was mistakenly thinking I got to share 4 times, but actually it would have been 3 presentations, I believe. And so this will be the second presentation. The first I shared with you last week. It was words, beacons of creative power, or mere devices of communication. Today's presentation is plasma, the 4th state of matter. This one got a lot of reactions. This one got a lot of interest. It's not like it got a ton of views on YouTube, but I think it has almost 300 views. So this is one of those conversations that definitely sparked some imaginations. So a little bit different than what we normally do here. We do typically interview people. Right now, I got to tell you, I'm the bottleneck. Last week was crazy. This week's been crazy. It's not that I've had necessarily more to do. It's just I've had either kind of a singular focus of something that needed to be completed by a certain time. Last week, it was a presentation. This week it's the same thing. I have a singular thing that I need to put my attention on until it's done. And that's a performance that I am doing tomorrow. But I promise you, if I haven't gone back to you yet, I know there's a bunch of you, but I'm aware of who you are. And I look forward to bringing you on live with me. Just need to get the process started. That's all. So I'll get back to you as soon as I possibly can. And we're going to have those interviews, and it's going to be a lot of fun. But for today, like I said, we got plasma, the 4th state of matter. I'm going to hit play on that. I'll be right here with you. I'll be monitoring the comments and look forward to seeing what you think about this.
So I admit that some of the references early in this presentation are intended somewhat to a younger audience. So there's people in this room that should get it. But once I get past that concept of what I'm talking about, I do get into a lot more things that should be relatable. So hopefully I'm not alienating anybody by referencing some of these things. And I also admit that I'm making some assumptions about what you do and do not know about plasma in this presentation. If you happen to know everything, you're a much better man or woman than I. How many of you are familiar with the YouTube personality Matthew Patrick, or Matt Pat? Matt Pat is most known for his YouTube channel, The Game Theorists, in which he explores a variety of video game related topics and theorizes about the science behind them, including how Mario can fly, the science behind Kirby, and how Sonic is lying, and more. Matt Pat also has a sister channel called The Film Theorists, where he explores topics ranging from how South Park avoided censorship, why you shouldn't fly to Mordor, the hidden message in Fight Club, and so on. How many of you are familiar with the Japanese manga and anime series Dragon Ball Z? I guess the Canadian version would be Dragon Ball Z, but it doesn't have the same ring to it. Next episode of Dragon Ball Z, right? Without getting into a lot of detail, the series follows the protagonist Goku, who among who, along with his companions, defends Earth against various foes. In the original Dragon Ball, there was a little more of a story, but as Goku became an adult and the series evolved into Dragon Ball Z, it basically just became about defending Earth and fighting and defeating increasingly stronger enemies. So right about now, you might be wondering what sort of connection there could possibly be between MatPat and Dragon Ball Z. In 2015, MatPat published a video on his Film Theorist channel titled, "What is the Dragon Ball Z Kamehameha Wave?" If you're not familiar with Dragon Ball, it's a series where both the protagonists, such as Goku and Gohan, and enemies, like Frieza and Cell, charge up their ki and shoot out giant energy balls at each other. Typically, the finishing move of any battle is one such energy wave known specifically as the Kamehameha wave, named after the Hawaiian king Kamehameha. There are several characters in the Dragon Ball universe who've mastered this technique and are liable to use it in any battle. It seems absurd to try to theorize how such an attack could be executed in real life, but that's exactly what MatPat's fans demanded of him. He admits that his research led him to question some of the basic assumptions he had about how the universe works, but he did eventually come to some interesting conclusions, which I'm about to share with you. In Dragon Ball, the characters are said to be manipulating ki energy. He points out that this is a direct reference to qi, one of the foundational principles of Chinese medicine and martial arts. The word qi literally translates into breath, air, or gas, and it is said to be the life force energy that exists in everything. You'll find out why in a moment this definition of qi is so fascinating. Unfortunately, MatPat notes that there isn't any specific evidence to support the idea of qi, but there is still a widespread belief in its existence. He also goes on to explain that the energy blasts appearing in Dragon Ball are not invisible. This would suggest they must be a form of matter. Matter is anything that takes up space or has mass. We've all learned about the three states of matter, typically in grade school: solids, liquids, and gases. The Kamehameha wave, however, does not behave like any of these states of matter. So how could it be a form of matter then? What your third grade science teacher may have failed to tell you is that there are more than just three states of matter. There's a fourth state of matter known as plasma, and the existence of plasma surprisingly goes a long way towards explaining Dragon Ball's energy blasts. But you may be astounded to find out just how wrong your grade school teacher was. Solids, liquids, and gases only make up 1% of the entire universe. Human beings are just a part of that 1%. Plasma makes up the other 99% of the observable universe. Stunning, isn't it? Perhaps one of the reasons plasma isn't frequently referenced is because we don't come across it that often here on Earth. Though there are a few objects and phenomena you're probably familiar with. There's fluorescent light bulbs, there's lightning, and of course there's the sun, which is visible from Earth, but not on Earth. The sun is a particularly interesting example because most of us have been led to believe, and sing along with me if you know it, the sun is a mass of incandescent gas, a gigantic nuclear furnace where hydrogen is built into helium at a temperature of millions of degrees. Correspondingly, you'll be interested to know that NASA defines the sun in this way. The sun is a star, a hot ball of glowing gases at the heart of our solar system. Their definition of the sun is right in alignment with the song I just referenced, which is "They Might Be Giants, Why Does the Sun Shine? The sun is a mass of incandescent gas." The reason you'll be interested in NASA's definition of the sun is because the word plasma is nowhere to be found in it, though when MatPat was putting together his video, he observed that they used both terms, gas and plasma, in their longer definition of the sun. But it's important to recognize that these are two entirely different states of matter, and the sun cannot be both gas and plasma. It must be one or the other. And if 99% of the observable universe truly is plasma, then logically, what else could it be? Either NASA is unsure whether to refer to the sun as a gas or a plasma, or there's a deeper reason they chose to obscure this knowledge. If they are trying to hide something, what more could they be hiding? Fortunately, it's not difficult to understand what plasma is when explained in the following manner. When you heat up a solid, such as a block of ice or butter, it becomes a liquid. When you continue to heat up a liquid, it becomes gas. When you continue to heat up gas, you get plasma. The scientific explanation is a little more esoteric, but it goes something like this. When a gas is superheated, the electrons and ions in the gas become so excited, they start to break away. So you end up with a soup of negatively charged electrons floating with positively charged ions from the atoms that have lost their electrons. Very simply, plasma is a superheated gas. But again, it becomes something entirely different when it is heated to that extent. So the Kamehameha wave can be explained in this way. There is air or gas surrounding the hands of the individual charging up to release an energy ball. While charging, they are heating up the gas that surrounds their hands to create a mass of plasma to release at their foes. Remember what was said earlier about chi, which translates to breath, air, or gas? Dragon Ball Z's infamous powering up sequences are further proof to the idea that the energy being manipulated by the characters in the series is indeed plasma. Characters are sometimes seen charging up for the length of an entire episode. You think I'm kidding, but this was close to the truth in the original airing of the Frieza battle. But I digress. MatPat points out that there is electricity and lightning surrounding the bodies of those charging up, indicating the presence of plasma. As I mentioned earlier, lightning is one commonplace form of plasma here on Earth. But once powered up, these characters are seen sustaining the same power level without continually charging. MatPat explains this is also in line with how plasma works. To convert any gas to plasma, including air, there is a big start of energy, typically around 33 kilovolts per centimeter. But once the plasma arc has been created, it can be sustained with only a tenth of the energy, 3 kilovolts per centimeter. By the same principle, the arc needs to be started next to its energy source, but once there, it can be drawn out to 10 times the distance from said source. This would explain why the Kamehameha wave starts near Goku, but A, can reach out far away from him, and B, why the attack is so much stronger when launched near the opponent. When separate beams are combined, they can grow even stronger. This is demonstrated during the second coming of Broly, the legendary Super Saiyan. In the final moments of battle, Goku and his two sons, Gohan and Goten, are shown launching Kamehameha waves together and combining their energies to defeat Broly. What's the point? The point is that plasma works the same way. When beams of plasma are combined, they show stronger, bigger, and more powerful. Plasma may well be a superheated gas, but it is nothing like gas, which is why it qualifies as a fourth state of matter. Remember, this is the same matter stars are made of. When Goku launches a Kamehameha wave, in effect, he is creating a small star between his hands. At higher temperatures, plasma becomes thicker, more viscous, to where it can be physically pushed. MatPat points out that in 2015, Boeing patented the plasma shield, which is being developed to stop or slow down shockwaves created by explosions. There's a striking similarity to Goku's ki shield. In Dragon Ball Z, we also see characters getting into energy ball clashes. Is it possible for plasma beams to push against another? The simple answer is yes. When two beams of plasma clash, they push against one another, forcing into each other up and out until the connection is broken or until they're too far away from their primary energy source. But what about the shape of the energy balls as seen in Dragon Ball Z? Why are they round? Think of stars in outer space. From a distance, we can see they are circular. When two big balls of plasma combine at moderate to high speeds, they splash outward and fuse together into a swirling mass of energy. Their magnetic fields reorganize into a ball shape until they create a black hole. Now that's where the similarities between real-life science and Dragon Ball physics end. as we never see two energy balls colliding and creating a black hole in the Dragon Ball universe. But isn't it surprising that a Japanese manga and anime series could teach us so much about this fourth state of matter, which before today some of you didn't even know about? But like I was, I'm sure you're still skeptical. I didn't know much about the existence of plasma until I had watched Matt Pat's video, and I never had it explained to me the way he did. So I wasn't entirely convinced and decided to dig deeper. My skepticism soon faded as I searched YouTube and Google for additional content discussing plasma. The phrase, "what is plasma?" returned 124 million search results in Google alone. There's an overwhelming amount of information out there, so instead of going blow by blow, I'm just going to share a few of the most noteworthy items I came across to further clarify and extrapolate on what plasma is. I watched one video aptly titled, "What is Plasma?" published by Red Orbit in 2013. In this video, Emerald Robinson discusses the fourth state of matter. Her explanation is right in line with Matt Pat's. So I'm not going to recap the entire video here, but she made a couple of statements that stoked my curiosity. We've already discussed how plasma is what gives fluorescent and neon lights their glow, but Robinson notes that it is also present in plasma television, and that chemists classify fire as plasma. The statement that caught my attention was that chemists classify fire as plasma. I decided to look into this matter because this would suggest that plasma isn't as obscure as Matt Pat had us thinking. On a website called Ask a Mathematician, Ask a Physicist, there's an article titled, "Is Fire a Plasma? What is Plasma?" that offers a very pragmatic answer. They say, generally speaking, by the time a gas is hot enough to be seen, it's a plasma. They go on to explain that the difference between a regular gas and plasma is that in plasma, most of the atoms are ionized. The gas is so hot and the atoms are slamming around so hard that some of the electrons are given enough energy to temporarily escape their host atoms. When this happens, plasma gains some electrical properties that a non-ionized gas doesn't have. It becomes conductive and responds to electrical and magnetic fields. And that's one of the true tests of whether something can be considered plasma. Fire qualifies as a plasma because it passes all the tests. Even small fires, like candle flames, respond strongly to electric fields and are conductive. Another fascinating video I came across was one called "Solid, Liquid, Gas, and Plasma," published on July 2015 on the TED Ed channel. There are several things that caught my attention in this video. First, they explain that static electricity, the northern lights, and the tail of a comet are all forms of plasma. This goes to show there are more commonplace examples of plasma, some right here on Earth. Second, when you put a plasma in an electric field, it accelerates, and a magnetic field steers it in circular orbits. When the particles within a plasma collide, or are accelerated by electricity or magnetism, light is generated, which is what we see when we look at the northern lights. Third, plasma isn't just a beautiful celestial phenomenon. It has implications for healthcare too. Plasma chemists have created highly specific plasma that can destroy or alter targeted chemicals, thereby killing pathogenic organisms on food or hospital surfaces. They also go on to explain that in the future, plasma could be used to permanently rid landfills of their waste, remove toxins from our air and water, and provide us with a potentially unlimited supply of renewable clean energy. So to this point, we've explored the scientific basis of plasma. We've also identified the many forms of plasma that can be found in and around Earth. What interests me more, and I'm sure what interests you more, are the possibilities staring back at us. If plasma has the potential to rid landfills of waste, remove toxins from air and water, and provide us with an unlimited supply of renewable clean energy, then it's far more significant discovery than some of us maybe even know. So now, I'm going to spend some time exploring the possibilities. Earlier, I alluded to Boeing's patent on a plasma force shield, so I'm going to start there. There are several articles online discussing this very thing. For the purpose of this presentation, I'm going to be referring to an article titled Boeing has patented plasma force shield protect against shockwaves on Science Alert. The subtitle is, if it's ever realized it could protect military vehicles from energy emitted by nearby blasts. Personally, I tend to think there's a reason for everything, and I doubt Boeing would be awarded a patent for a plasma shield by accident, but for now I'll leave that alone. The author of the article explains that as weapons become more sophisticated, researchers are putting more effort into defense systems to keep pace with the latest developments. Boeing, aerospace and defense giant, was awarded a patent to develop a force field system to protect military vehicles from shockwaves resulting from explosions. I'm going to quote this next part of the article because I think you'll find it fascinating. Boeing's proposed system involves using a combination of lasers, electricity, and microwaves to rapidly heat up the air between the vehicle and a blast. This heat creates a plasma shield that's denser than the surrounding air and able to detect or absorb the energy from the incoming shockwave. Does that sound anything like I mentioned earlier in this presentation? Now, granted, this force field wouldn't exactly be like the type of impenetrable wall seen in sci-fi movies, as seen here. Boeing's system would protect a target, such as a vehicle carrying troops, a building like a command center or hospital, from the after effects of an explosion. This system would be mounted on a military vehicle or other target and have sensors to detect the velocity and shape of an incoming threat. It would be able to determine both the size and force of the resulting explosion. The sensors would calculate the time it would take for a shockwave to reach the target and from what direction. The force field would be able to protect a small region of the target and would not envelop it in its entirety. The system would heat the air around the target, generating a transient medium that intercepts the shockwave. The idea is to use an electromagnetic arc to create an intermediate medium in midair by generating plasma from the surrounding air. Boeing believes the plasma field can divert, reflect, or absorb the energy passing through. Earlier, we discovered that plasma has implications for the healthcare field as well. Again, a quick search on Google turned up more information on the subject than I'd even bargained for. There is, in fact, an entire Wikipedia entry simply titled Plasma Medicine. Wikipedia says plasma medicine is an emerging field that combines plasma physics, life sciences, and clinical medicine. It is being studied in disinfection, healing, and cancer. According to an article in IPO Science titled Plasma Medicine, Current State of Research and Medical Application, plasma medicine refers to the direct application of cold atmospheric plasma, or CAP, or in the human body. The two sources of CAP being used on an experimental and first practical application level are dielectric barrier discharges, DBD, and atmospheric pressure plasma jets, APPJ. The article goes on to explain that there is no risk of CAP application and there are no indications of genotoxic effects when used. CAP can inactivate a broad spectrum of microorganisms, including multi-drug resistant ones, stimulate cell proliferation and tissue regeneration at a low plasma treatment intensity, inactivate cells by initializing programmed cell death at higher plasma treatment intensity. In recent years, plasma was used in the fields of wound healing and treatment of infective skin diseases. Further research is being conducted, especially in the fields of dentistry and the use of plasma in cancer treatment. The article ends by noting that a more suitable and reliable source of plasma would be needed for different therapeutic applications. There's another article that was published in 2014 that corroborates most of what I've already shared with you about plasma, as well as plasma medicine. This one can be found on the Dartmouth College website, and it's titled Medical Applications of Plasma Energy. Here's a statement from the article I found particularly interesting. Plasma energy contains free energy carriers, i.e., ions and electrons that are neither bound to atoms or molecules, nor to active radicals. These free carriers include reactive nitrogen species and reactive oxygen species that can activate important mechanisms in the body. They target specific molecules such as prothrombin or for blood coagulation, cytokines for killing bacteria, and angiogenesis for tissue regeneration. Because plasma energy can allow us to control bodily mechanisms such as wound healing, in the future, healing a wound could be as simple as exposing the area to a simple plasma energy light. Okay, so we know Boeing sees potential in the plasma force shield. We've learned a little bit about plasma medicine. What about this idea that plasma can rid landfills of waste? As it turns out, there's quite a bit of information out there on this topic as well. First, I'm going to pull out some highlights from an exhaustive article that was written for Wired in 2012 by David Woolman. The article is titled, High-Powered Plasma Turns Garbage into Gas. Woolman starts out by saying that we don't appear to have a solution to the problem of humanity's ever-expanding rubbish pile. He notes that Columbia Ridge Landfill in Arlington uses plasma gasification, technology that turns waste into fuel without producing emissions. This facility is the first ever commercial plant in the US to use plasma gasification, which can turn household garbage into hydrogen and carbon monoxide, which can then be burned as fuel or used to make ammonia and fertilizers. I'll let Woolman explain how this process works. The household waste delivered into this hangar will get shredded, then travel via conveyor to the top of a large tank. From there, it falls into a furnace that's heated to 1500 degrees Fahrenheit and mixes with oxygen and steam. The resulting chemical reaction vaporizes 75 to 85% of the waste, transforming it into a blend of gases known as syngas, so-called because they can be used to create synthetic natural gas. The syngas is piped out of the system and segregated. The remaining substances, still chemically intact, descend into a second vessel that's roughly the size of a Volkswagen Beetle. This cauldron makes the one above sound lukewarm by comparison. Inside, 2 electrodes aimed towards the middle of the vessel create an electric arc that, at 18,000 degrees, is almost as hot as lightning. This intense sustained energy becomes so hot that it transforms materials into their constituent atomic elements. The reactions take place at more than 2,700 degrees, which means that this isn't incineration. This is emission-free molecular deconstruction. The small amount of waste material that survives falls to the bottom of the chamber where it's trapped in molten glass that later hardens into inert blocks. The seemingly sci-fi transformation occurs because the trash is blasted apart by plasma, the forgotten stepsister state of matter. Another fascinating read on the topic of plasma and our global garbage problem is one titled Plasma Arc Recycling on a site called Explain That Stuff. This article was published quite recently on February 16, 2018. Author Chris Woodford begins the article by exploring how much garbage the average household in the United States produces. That amount is about 2 kilograms or 5 pounds per day, which is about 3/4 of a ton per person per year. Even recycling isn't the perfect solution, since we have various things that are made from many materials, such as electronic circuit boards, which can't easily be broken down and made into new things. Thus, most of our waste continues to be buried beneath the ground. Unfortunately, our landfills are starting to get a bit full. Incinerating waste isn't a popular option either because of the air pollution it produces. Plasma arc recycling, however, could be the solution we've been waiting for. The process involves heating waste to super high temperatures to produce gas that can be burned for energy and a rocky solid waste that can be used for building and construction. This cleaner, greener form of waste treatment is starting to gain some attention, but some of the critics are saying it's merely glorified incineration process, but we already learned that it isn't. Woodford notes that while incineration involves a chemical reaction we know as combustion, plasma arc recycling does not. The waste is heated to much higher temperatures, so it melts and vaporizes. An electric device known as a plasma arc is used in the process. This is essentially a super hot torch made by passing gas through an electrical spark. It works a lot like a spark plug in a car, where electricity feeds into the plug from the battery, makes a lightning-like spark leap across a small air gap between two contacts, and the spark ignites the fuel that powers the engine. A plasma arc is essentially the same thing, only bigger. Oxygen, nitrogen, or argon blows through it to create a super hot plasma torch. A plasma arc heats the waste to anywhere from 1,000 to 15,000 degrees Celsius, melting and turning the waste into vapor. Organic material cools down into relatively clean gases, where metals and other inorganic waste fuse together and cool into solids. Basically, you end up with syngas and a rocky solid waste that resembles chunks of broken glass. Syngas can be burned to make energy, and the glass-like rocky solid can be used as aggregate for road building and construction. This is how it works in theory. In practice, the syngas can become contaminated with toxic gases like dioxins, and the rocky solid may also contain contaminated materials at the end of the process. Plasma recycling is still new, but many plants across the world are beginning to adopt this technology, including areas of Europe, North America, and Asia. Okay, so there's one more open loop that I wanted to close, which is the idea that plasma could be an unlimited source of renewable, clean energy. Yet again, I found evidence to support this claim. On Futurism, there's an article called "We Are Closer Than Ever to Unlimited Clean Energy." This article opens by saying both government agencies and private enterprises are working tirelessly to make fusion energy a reality. This would involve generating our own mini-sun, which would require us to solve an extremely complex set of scientific and engineering problems. But if we are successful, fusion energy promises to be a green, safe, and unlimited source of energy. They point out that scientists and engineers have been working on this problem since the 1950s. Princeton Plasma Physics Lab claims the first commercial fusion power plant is at least 25 years away. Okay, but what is fusion power? It's where two nuclei of the hydrogen atom fuse together. Since both nuclei are positively charged and repel each other, this presents a challenge. They will only collide and smash together if they are moving extremely fast, fuse, and then release the energy we're trying to create. This happens naturally on the sun. So what are we really talking about here? You guessed it, plasma. What is plasma? To this point in the presentation, I've shared a lot of answers with you. But for me, these answers merely brought more questions to mind. Is plasma a fluorescent or neon light bulb? Is it lightning, the northern lights, or the tail of a comet? Is it fire, the sun, or a TV? Is it medicine, an energy source, or an arc that vaporizes garbage? Is it a shield that protects us from shock waves? In a way, the more we try to define it, the less able we are to put it into a box. We know that it's a superheated gas, but beyond that, it appears to take any form we want it to. It appears we can adapt this formless form into many things, thus achieving many desirable results, such as the elimination of waste. This had me asking several questions, such as, why does it seem like plasma isn't being talked about on a bigger scale? Why does it seem like a scientific afterthought when it's beginning to show up as a solution to many of our global problems? Is it possible scientists have known about plasma for longer than most of us even realize, and that's why it's being taken for granted or swept under the carpet? Paradoxically, plasma is uncontrollable outside of our limited sphere of existence. We know that we live on a giant rock floating through space, but we have very little to no control over what happens beyond our small planet. Plasma isn't a thing, at least in terms of how we typically think about things, such as pens, a cup of coffee, or steam rising from a boiling pot. And yet, when you stop and think about it, plasma is also everything. If 99% of the observable universe is indeed plasma, it means that virtually everything we can see beyond Earth is plasma. We thought we were living in a world mostly composed of solids, liquids, and gases, but none of these are in fact the predominant form of matter in our universe. We've basically ruled out humanity and most things on Earth as being not plasma. But virtually anything that exists beyond the confines of our home planet that we can see is. This begs many additional questions. Are there other parts of the universe we can't see that are primarily composed of plasma, that aren't primarily composed of plasma? Are there other planets like ours where our understanding of the three states of matter would logically apply? Is there a fifth, sixth, or seventh state of matter that we don't even know about? And if so, how would that change our perspective on matter and the universe? If we knew that 99% of the universe was made up of plasma, how would that change the way we live? Gradually, we're beginning to see what the answer to that question might be. But I suspect we're a long way from unlocking the secrets of plasma, let alone the universe. Now I want you to ponder for yourself, what is plasma? Thank you.
So I hope you enjoyed this presentation. I think the first thing that's well worth mentioning is this did not occur in March 2018. There was no The Question community in March 2018. It went for not quite 2 years, I think. If I really had to go and find the date, I'm pretty sure I could, but this presentation would have been circa 2016. And after that, we would have went on to other community projects, which were also a lot of fun. Listening Room YYC, and eventually one of the projects that's still going today, which is the Indie YYC. That one is super exciting. It's a Facebook page, not a Facebook group. Who's coughing? There's no one in the room. Anyway, there's another community called the Indie YYC, and some of you came over from there. But if you haven't checked that out, if you're an artist and you like to contribute things like poetry or music, that might be another page for you to check out for sure. I'm still very proud of that project and what we've been able to accomplish with it so far. Right now, it's mostly just myself and Wakefield Brewster running that project over at the Indie YYC. As for the presentation, what did you get out of it? What did you like, and what do you see as being possible having listened to this presentation, or what do you see as being fascinating or interesting? I'm pretty much coming away with one of the things that I frequently come away with. I've been hearing kind of some discussions or like paying attention to some things in the chat at work and such, and people are talking about how, well, it's amazing how there's still so much that we haven't figured out. And I'm like, it's not that. I think we actually haven't figured out 80 to 90% of what there is to know. And I bet that good chunks of that are impossible to know. That's what I think, because I'm looking at plasma going, after all those explanations, after all those articles and sources and stuff that I was able to bring together, it still makes no sense. I still can't understand it. What is plasma? It's been described as the fourth state of matter. Now, if you want your mind blown, tune in the week following, because I had a presentation on beyond plasma, and it literally goes beyond what we talked about here. But plasma in and of itself, very, very fascinating. The more I think about it, there's got to be 4 presentations I gave. Anyway, I don't know if I can find the other one. I might have skipped one. It's possible. Either way, though, plasma, beyond plasma. If you enjoyed this, certainly look forward to hearing your thoughts. And if you didn't enjoy it, well, we live stream every day. So hopefully you find some stuff that you do like. That's all from me. That's all from the Spark Infinity team for this week. But I'll be back tomorrow. So have yourself a fantastic day, morning, afternoon, evening, whatever time you happen to be watching this. We thank you for watching. Thank you for tuning in. Look forward to spotlighting you and your creativity. Bye for now.